In this video, we'll create an HTML email template. Okay guys, so let's go ahead and take a look at the email template design before we get started with the tutorial. And I just want to mention that I'm currently working on an HTML email course, and once it's complete, I'll have a link to it in the video description. So at the top we can see we have a logo, the great big banner image, these social media icons, then we have a title, paragraph, and button section, followed by a 2-column section layout with titles, pictures, paragraph text, and links. Then at the very bottom we have the contact information, and once we size the email template down underneath 600 pixels in width, it's going to turn into the mobile version that you'll see on cell phones and some tablets, for example. And when we size it back up, it's going to go back to the full width that you might see in like a desktop email client like Gmail. Okay, so let's move over to index.html and get started laying out the HTML for our email template. And if you're wondering what program this is a free text editor called Sublime Text, which works for Windows, Mac, and Linux. Okay, so in index.html, I'm just going to make sure it's linked to Google Chrome with some dummy text here, which it is, as you can see. And let's go ahead and start off with our doc type. So if we just type in HTML, and hit enter, it's going to fill out the fields for us. And we could do away with the title. We don't need that because we're not making a website, we're making an email template. And let's drop down to the body section where we'll actually add the HTML content, and we're going to add the wrapper. So as you can see, there's some padding around the white space that makes up the actual content. So we're going to create a wrapper so we can add some padding with div ID wrapper. And later we'll make the div ID wrapper white and the body section that you see in the background that sort of soft off gray shade or creamish gray shade. And I'll just do an HTML comment here saying that this is the end of the wrapper because we're going to add a fair amount of HTML in between the start and closing tag for the wrapper. So now let's drop down to the first of our content inside of the wrapper, which is the header, which will contain the logo on the left and the social media icons on the right. So we'll just use the HTML5 header tag here, and then inside of it for the logo on the left, we're going to create a new div ID that we're just going to call logo, and we can open and close that. And then for the logo image, we'll use the image source tag imgsrc. So if we just write img, it'll fill that out for us. And then all of the images inside of the email template that we're building are already uploaded to the internet on my website. We'll need to link to images for email templates that are already uploaded online in order for them to display in email clients. So all of our images will start with the URL here leading up to the uploads directory in the URL. So we can just copy that and paste it in there for the rest of the images that we'll add throughout the tutorial. You just need to type it in once. Okay, so now let's move over to the social media icons, and we're going to create a new div ID for that as well. So we can drop down underneath div ID logo, and for the social icons, we'll create a div ID that we'll just call callout. So we'll say div ID equals callout. And then we can drop down and close out the div. And to display our social icons, what we're going to do is we're going to use an unordered list. And we're going to give that unordered list a class, and we'll just call it social. And then we can drop down and close out the unordered list. And in an unordered list, we have list items for each individual link and image here. So for the first one, we'll start out with our li tag, and then inside of it we'll have a link with ahref, and then you can link to your Facebook page, for example, here with your full URL starting with the HTTP. I'm just going to do the hashtag to keep it blank for now, and then to open in a new window. This may or may not apply to email clients, but we'll just do it just in case. We'll say target _ blank, then we can close out the a tag for the link and add the image inside of it, which, as we know, will start with this URL, and then after uploads /, we'll just add Facebook .png. Okay, so now let's go ahead and save this and take a look at it in the browser. So the logo is a lot bigger than I expected. I forgot to resize that, but we'll resize it with our CSS later. And then of course we have the first of our social images. So let's go ahead and just copy this list item to save ourselves some time. And we can paste it underneath. And all we need to do now is change the URL to the proper social network. So we'll just change this to Instagram, then we have Twitter, and then the last one is YouTube. Right, and then if we go and save it, there we have all 4 of our social networks displaying with the icons. So now let's drop down to the banner image that we see right here, which is already uploaded to the internet. But we're just going to create a div class for the banner image, and we'll create a class in case you want to add another banner beneath. As we know with div IDs, we just want to reference that once in an email template or HTML website, but with class we can use it multiple times. So inside of the div class, I'm just going to go ahead and add the image for that, which is going to be uploads/responsive-html-email.png. And then we can drop down underneath the div class banner to add the first column section of the website. So we see that the image is displaying. So let's drop down to this one column section that has the title, paragraph text, and the button. And we'll just create a div class for the one column section. So div class 1-col. And then let's start off with the heading 1. So again, to save some time, I'll do a little copy and pasting. You can just do dummy text or type it out if you want. So we'll say H1 for a heading 1 and paste that in. So as we know with HTML, we have heading 6 being the smallest and heading 1 being the largest. So as you can see there, we have our big heading 1 text. And then we can add our paragraph text. So I'll just copy this text, and for the paragraph, we'll just add the P tag and paste it in. And then to create a new line, I'm just going to do separate paragraph blocks here. And then if we go and refresh, as you can see right there, we have our line breaks in between the different paragraphs. So lastly, inside of this one column section, we have the Learn More button on the bottom right. So let's create a div class that we'll just call button-holder for the button. So we can position it off to the right, and then inside of that for the button, we'll use a link tag with the A tag, and then we'll just say class button and href. I'm just going to leave it blank, but you can link to your website or wherever you want to send people to. And then for good measure, we'll say target_blank to open in a new page. And then we'll just add the text and close out the link with the closing A tag. So there we have the link, the Learn More link at the bottom. Later with the CSS, we'll turn it into an actual button. So now we're almost ready for the 2-column section at the bottom, but before we do that, let's add that line that we're seeing referenced twice in the email template. So we're just going to add a simple div class, and we'll call it line, and then later in the CSS, we'll actually make it appear. So for the 2-column section, similar to the 1-col, we'll just say div class 2-col. We can close that out, and then we have a heading at the top, but it's smaller than the heading that we used before. So we'll use an H2 tag rather than an H1, and then we'll just say latest video release, and then once again we can add the image. So we'll say image source, and that's going to be the same URL, but uploads/send-mail.png. And then underneath that we have our paragraph text about the newsletter release. So I'll just paste that in. And then underneath that we have a link to go check out the article or blog post, or for video release, as it says, maybe send people to YouTube. So again, I'll just leave the link blank and write target_blank, and then I'll paste in the text for the link. And if we go and save it and refresh, there we have our heading 2, image, paragraph text, and the link. So the second of the two columns is the exact same thing. You can change it around or only include an image, for example, in that section, but I'm just going to paste this in to save some time, as I said before, and then we can add the next line underneath the 2-column section, and we'll be able to just use the same div class line that we used above the 2-column section. Okay, and then lastly, at the very bottom, we have the contact section with the different contact information. So we'll just say p-class contact, so we can center it and add some padding later on. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it in. And let me just align this. And to send the different text to new lines, what we'll do is we'll just add a BR line break tag rather than creating new paragraph blocks. And we just need 3 of them, and then we can close out the paragraph after the email address. Okay, so let's go and refresh. And there we have our contact information at the very bottom, which we'll center using CSS, and we'll add some padding to it later. Okay, so that does it for all of our HTML. So now we can move over to the CSS and add our styling. So with email templates, you don't want to create a new style.css sheet. We're going to do an internal style sheet here by just saying style type text /CSS. And then later, I'm going to show you a really cool tool which will make the CSS in line with the HTML, which helps it render properly with email clients. So the first thing that we'll add with our CSS is we're going to change the font that's showing up here to this sort of softer, rounder font. And that's going to be a Google font called Catamaran. So if you just do a Google search for Google font Catamaran, and then we click this link right here, then we select this font, or you can search for other fonts that you like. And then we'll just select family selected and then customize. And here we can change the different weight of the font. So we'll just do 400 and 800, and then we can copy the @import URL, and we'll just paste that in here above all of our CSS. And then we'll also want to copy the font family so we can add that to the body of the website. So before we style the body, what we want to do is we're just going to get rid of some inherent margin, border, or padding that the email client might want to push onto the email template. So we'll reference the HTML document itself with the asterisk, and then we'll just say margin 0, border 0, and then padding 0. And that's good to do with creating websites and email templates. All right, and then for the body section, we can go ahead and declare our font family to change it to Catamaran. And then if we go and save it and refresh, now we have that cool looking font, which will add a little bit more style to as well and change the size of the font too. So next, let's add the background color that we're seeing here, the sort of grayish cream shade, which we'll use a hex value for. So we'll say background color, and the hex value is D8DBDB. And if you want to change it to your own color, just do a search for hex colors, and you can select from all different colors with using the hex value there. And then let's change it to font size 18 pixel to increase the font size and see how that looks. So we have the background color, and our font is a little easier to see now with the larger size. And then here we have a max width set to 800 pixels. So we can go ahead and set that. Some people say 600 pixels for email templates, but I like to make it a little bit bigger in some cases. So once we've added the max width, as we can see, the images are overflowing, and we'll want to center it, and then we'll take care of the images overflowing outside of the width. So let's say margin 0 auto, which will center all of our content with the max width 800 pixels. And then let's also say padding 2%. And then let's go ahead and refresh. And as you can see, everything is centered and the paragraph text is obeying to the 800 max width, but the images are not. So we'll take care of that in just a moment. But first, let's make the color of our text a little softer. Rather than that sort of hard black shade, we'll make it kind of a dark gray with the hex value 565859. And then in order to see that color show up the best, let's make our wrapper white with the background color. So we'll say hashtag wrapper to reference the ID instead of a period with a class, and we'll say background F6FAFF. So plain white is FFF. This is going to be a little bit of an off-white. It's kind of a little bit softer and easier on the eyes, I think, as opposed to the plain white, which you can see with the background of the images with the laptop and the emails coming out of it. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take care of the max widths for the images, which are overflowing. So we'll say IMG max width 100%. And if we go and save it, now they're contained inside of the email template, and they will be if we size the page down as well. So next, let's take care of the header, which contains the logo and the callout section for the social icon. So we'll say header, and let's give it a width of 98%. So it takes up most of the width of the wrapper, but not all of it. And then underneath that, what we can do is let's go ahead and position and resize the logo. So we'll reference the div ID for the logo with hashtag logo. And then let's give it a max width of 220 pixels. All right, and then we'll refresh it, and there we have our logo, but we'll want to reposition it to add some space off to the sides here. So let's give it a margin of 2% on the top, 0 on the right, 0 on the bottom, and then 5% on the left. And then to get it to apply all of the margin, we'll just need to have it float to the left as well. So the spacing isn't proper, so let's go ahead and add float left underneath the margin here. And then let's go ahead and save it. And as you can see, it's applied there, but we have the social icons pushing right over the image now. So let's go ahead and take care of styling those by referencing the div ID callout, and then we'll get to the actual individual list items. So we'll say hashtag callout, and let's say float right rather than float left with the logo. And that's going to position them off to the right here. And then let's add some margin around them to have the spacing similar to the logo here. So we'll say margin 3% top and 3% right, and then we'll do 2% bottom and 0 left. Okay, so that looks good, except for we need to have our social icons displaying in line next to one another. So let's go ahead and reference the UL class first. So we say dot social, and then we're going to say float right, and then we'll say list style type none, and that's going to do away with the bullet points, which is inherent with unordered list and list items. And then to get the social icons displaying next to one another, let's drop down and reference the list items inside of the social class. So we'll say social li, and whoops, I wrote L1. And then we're going to say display in line rather than display block. So in line, we'll have them next to one another. All right, so there we have it, except for the spacing is a little different. Let's add some more margin to the top of the actual unordered list. So we'll just say, or we can use, let's use margin. So we'll say margin top 8%. Okay, so if we go and refresh, let's do the back and forth, and that looks good. So everything's matching until we get down to the one column section. So as you can see, there's a little bit of space in between the banner and the one column section. So let's add that space to the banner itself. So we'll say period banner because it's a class. And then let's add some margin to the bottom, and let's say 3%. All right, so now if we go and refresh, we'll have some margin, and we can move on to the one column section underneath the banner image. Okay, so we'll reference the div class 1-col. And then let's add some padding around it so the text isn't pushed up all the way off to the sides. So we'll say padding 2%, and that's going to make some nice spacing in between the text and the end of the banner before the body color starts. Okay, so let's move on to the heading 1 now, and let's space out the letters a little bit. So we'll say letter spacing 1%, and I always think that looks a little bit nicer with titles. Okay, so now if we go back and forth, it looks good, except for, as you can see, the paragraph text is different. So with the finished version, it kind of has that newspaper feel off to the sides with text align justify. So let's reference the P tag for all of the paragraphs, and we'll say text align justify rather than text align left or center or right. And that looks good. And now we can move on to the Learn More button that we see underneath the paragraph text. So if you remember, we added a class for that that's called div class button holder, and then we have the button inside of it. So let's reference the button holder class first so we can position it off to the right, and we'll add some spacing around it. So we'll say dot button dash holder and then float right. And that's going to push it all the way off to the side with the 2% padding for the one col section. But as you can see, there's some additional spacing around the finished version. So we'll just say margin 0 top, 2% right, 4% bottom, and 0 left. And that's going to separate it from the line that's underneath it also. Okay, so now we can move on to styling the actual button. So we just have btn for the button class. So we'll reference that. So .btn. And we're just going to say float right for this. So it floats to the right inside of the button holder. And then we'll say background, and this is going to be sort of that black gray shade, which is 303840. And then we'll give it its color, which is an off-white for the text color, which is F6FAFF. And that's going to match the white background, the off-white background. Okay, so there we have our text in that light shade, and then we have the dark shade. But let's go ahead and get rid of the underline with text decoration none and make it bold. So we'll just say font weight 800, which we can use because we added that using the Google font, if you remember. And that's looking closer to the original, but we want to work on the spacing. So what we can do is we can add padding inside of the button, and we'll say padding 8 pixels top bottom and 12 pixels left right. And that's going to create spacing in between the text and the edge of the button. And then to round the corners, we'll say border radius 8 pixels. And that should match up pretty close. So now let's go ahead and let's move over to the hover effect. So not all email clients will have a hover effect, but we'll just do it just in case they allow for it. So we'll say btn:hover, and then let's change the background color to a lighter gray shade, which is the hex value 58585A. Okay, so now let's go ahead and save it, and let's compare the original to the version we've been working on, which looks pretty good, as you can see here. And okay, I think the only difference is that the letter spacing is a little off. So we'll add letter spacing 1 pixel, or you can do 1%. 1% might be a little much though. Alright, so now let's move on to the line that appears underneath the first column, which, if you remember, we added a div class for that we just called line. So let's go ahead and reference that. So we'll say dot line, and then we're going to say clear both. And what that's going to do is that's going to create an invisible horizontal rule where it sits so nothing displays next to it. And then we'll say height 2 pixels, so we can give it a background color in order for it to display. So we'll say background color, and we'll use sort of a dark gray shade with E3, E9, E9. Or it might be kind of a lighter gray, actually. Alright, so there we have it. And then we'll just need to add some spacing around it also. So let's go ahead and we'll say margin 4% top bottom. So margin 4% top bottom, and then auto left right, which will center it, because what we're going to do is we're not going to have it display at 100%. As you can see, there's a little gap off to the sides, which I think looks pretty cool to match the one column widths with its padding. So we'll say width 96% to make for room for 2% padding on either side, basically. So that looks good, and we have both of them displaying on the page now, since we only needed to add the style once to apply to both div classes. And now we can move down to the 2-column sections. So we'll go ahead and reference the div class 2-col. So we'll say dot 2-col, and then we'll say float left, so they display next to one another, and then we'll say width 46%. Instead of 50%, we want to make room for the padding on either side. So as you can see right now, they're kind of pushed up right next to one another. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a padding of 2% all around, and that's going to make up for 8% total with the width. So 46 times 2 is 92, so that's the 8%. Okay, so that looks pretty good, as you can see. And the last thing with the 2-column sections is the text for the link is a little different. So I don't like the inherent blue shade, so we just made that sort of a softer blue. And we're going to say A color hex value 607 CC3. And then let's get rid of the underline underneath it. So we'll say text decoration none. Another thing that you could do if you want is to add a hover effect where when you hover over it, it has the text decoration underline. But let's move down to the last section, which is the P class contact. So let's go ahead and reference that in the CSS with the period for the class, and then we'll just say contact. And then we want our text centered, so we'll just say text align center. And then for spacing, we'll just add some padding on the bottom with padding bottom 3%. Okay, so now let's save it and refresh it, and that looks good. And just like the original, we can't really tell a difference as we move back and forth until we size the website down. So as you can see, the 2-column sections haven't shifted into the single column section. So let's go ahead and take care of that with a media query. So I have to say that some email clients may not respond to the media query as well as others, but as I said, I'm going to have a link in the video description to a different email template course, which you can check out, that uses tables instead of media queries, which takes a lot longer but is more Okay, so in order to start the media query, let's go ahead and drop down underneath the rest of our CSS, and we'll be referencing the two-column class again. So let's start it off with @media, and then in parentheses max-width 600 pixels. So basically we're saying any screen underneath 600 pixels, we want to apply this style to the two-column client class. Friendly. So we can go ahead and do away with all this style inside of it, except for the width actually, because we're just going to be changing the width of it. So we'll change it from 46% to 97%. So that will give us a little bit of padding off to the side still. So now if we refresh, as we can see, it's changed to the single column layout. So if we size it up at 600 pixels, it'll turn back into the full screen, or we can size it down to go to the mobile version. Okay, so that does it for the building of the email template. So for the rest of the video, I'm going to show you a really cool tool called CSS Inliner, which you can do a Google search for, and that's by MailChimp. So what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and paste all of our HTML and CSS in here. And then what it's going to do is it's going to make it inline, so it's easier for email clients to read the HTML and CSS. So what we can do is we can just copy that and paste it into wherever we want to send our HTML email. And then there's one other tool I want to show you, which is called Litmus Puts Mail. So with this, it's going to send our email for us to our email client so we can test it and see how our email looks. So I'm just going to write in my Macintosh email here, and then I'll add a subject, just test, and then what we can do is we can say move my CSS inline, or we can just put in inline CSS for us. I'm going to do the original HTML and CSS and then have them move it inline for us. So then I'll just select that I'm not a robot and then hit send mail. So once you hit send mail, you may have to confirm that it can receive the test email, but once you've done that, as you can see right here, it's going to send it to our email for us. And then here we have our email template, as you can see. Okay, so that does it for the video. Once again, I want to thank you for watching. Please remember to like this video, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. Then I'll see you in the next video, and thanks for watching.